In this video, we're going to tie the Scrambler. And the Scrambler is a creation of Sam Sumlin. Sam owns Space Coast Flies in the community fly shop in Gulf Shores, Alabama. And I'd really encourage you to visit the shop if you're down in that community. It's really a great fly shop. And though Sam now has a Scrambler 2.0 out, this original Scrambler is a great redfish and black drum pattern, speckled trout pattern, and in different colors, it's a great warm water pattern as well. And this is a bluegill and or crab color scheme that we're going to tie in this video. So let's get started. The hook I'm using is a Mustad 3407 or 34007, depending on whether it's the Dura 10 version or the full stainless version. And for thread, I'm using Fluorescent Orange UTC 140 denier. And I lay down just a really short thread base here before I tie on my eye. Now my eye is a medium double pupil in orange, and I bring my thread back to about an eye length back and make a few cross wraps in one direction and then a few cross wraps in another direction. Then I kind of check the position of my eye, and I want to go back just a little farther because I want a full eye length back there from the eye of the hook. So I'll make a few more wraps in one direction, a few more wraps in the other direction, and then make what I like to call stirrup wraps over the top, underneath, over the top, underneath, and then make a few horizontal wraps above the hook shank and below the eyes, and then take my thread back with semi-touching wraps. They don't have to be actually touching, all the way back to the bend of the hook. And on this hook is just in front of the barb, about right there. And again, those wraps don't have to be exactly touching. Now, for the tail on the fly, we're using fluorescent blue laser dub, and this is just a really small bunch of it, and we kind of want to even those pieces out a bit. And we want a tail about like the hook shank itself, so about right there, and just take a couple of wraps. They don't have to be touching wraps. It's a couple of wraps. Secure that down, fold over the front half of that, and then secure that down with a few more wraps of thread. And we check our length, and that looks a little bit long. So I'm actually going to just cut that off, and I'll cut it off at kind of an angle. But the nice thing about laser dub is then you can just pick it out and it becomes really random again. So that looks about right for our tail. Now our next material is gold crystal flash, and we want about a half of a full length of gold crystal flash, and I'm going to just wrap this around my thread and pull it up to the top, and we want one strand of this down each side of the hook. So I'll make a few fairly loose wraps and then pull each side down and tighten it up. Now I want to trim these while I have them here. I want to trim them about 1.5 hook lengths. So there's 1 and 1.5, so that would be about right there. So now we have these nice splayed out legs. Our next material is a rubber leg, and these are crab crusher legs number 3 with shrimp blue barred clear. And to tie these in, I wrap them in under the hook shank just in front of my thread, because I want one of these legs down each side of my hook shank. And I just take a few loose wraps here. Whoops, let me grab that back right there, down each side of the hook shank. And that little piece is fine, so now I have one leg down each side. Now while I have these, and before I tie any other materials in, let's go ahead and trim these. And we want these a bit shorter than our crystal flash, and I want to leave a little bit of this pink at the end, so I'm going to trim them about right there. So they're just a tad shorter than our crystal flash. And my thread is hanging right there at the base of my tie-in point. And my next material is, for the body, and the nice flash on the body, is opal rootbear Estaz, and this is standard size Estaz. And I like to strip a few of those fibers away to expose some of that core to tie it in. And I just hold that right on top of my tie-in point for the tail, and again tie that in. I want to loop that all the way back to the base of that blue tail, and bring my thread forward and open spiral wraps to just behind the eye, the lead eyes that is. And then I take close to touching wraps. They don't have to be touching wraps of the Estaz, and with each wrap I like to bring those fibers back with my fingers, pull them back a bit so they don't trap the previous wrap, and we wrap that all the way forward. And I cut about a 4-inch piece, and a 4-inch piece is just about enough for one of these flies, plus just a little bit left to hold on to. And I snug that up right behind the eye, the lead eyes, and take a couple of wraps of my tie-in thread there, a couple of wraps in front. After trimming off the tag end of my Estaz, I invert the hook. Now our next material, which is the wing and or tail of the fly, is a rabbit strip, and this is tiger barred rabbit strip, and this is black barred, key lime, and baby blue, and this is kind of a bluegill or a crab color, depending on whether you're fishing warm water or salt water. And we're actually going to pierce this onto the hook itself, and we only want about a hook shank of this behind the shaft of the hook, behind actually the bend of the hook. So at roughly this point, I want my rabbit strip to be on the hook shank when we pierce it, about right there. And I still have enough in the front to tie it down. And so I'll mark that point, and then I'll bring my rabbit strip back and pierce the hook into the rabbit strip, and it's the hide side first, and get it over the barb of the hook. And then I'm going to take it out of the vise, move it down the hook shank, put the hook back in the vise, and that looks just about right. So I'll move my thread in front of my lead eyes, and then I pull that rabbit strip forward, and I begin to separate those rabbit fibers so I can have a nice clean tie-in point. I'm actually going to strip those off. So clean out and kind of part that hair and strip some of those off. And then I'm going to tie down just in front of the lead eyes with a few wraps of thread. And then I'm going to reach in with my scissors, and I'm going to cut that rabbit strip off just in front of my thread. And that leaves me just enough room to tighten my thread down and build a nice thread head while keeping the eye clean. And we want to build a pretty substantial thread head here. Yeah, looks nice. And then once we get our thread head built, we get our whip finish tool and do a 4 or 5 turn. I like to do front to back whip finish. And then trim my thread, and we've got a few tiny fibers of rabbit there, but those will not hurt anything. I'm going to go ahead and trim those. Make sure our eye is nice and clear there. And again, we have a few just microscopic fibers there, but since we're doing a video, we'll try to get rid of some of those. Now at this point, our fly is finished, and you just simply apply your choice of head cement or UV resin to the head of the fly. And that is the Scrambler. Really a great saltwater and freshwater pattern depending on what bait fish you're imitating. Anything that eats bait fish will eat this fly. So I hope you'll give it a try. It's quick and easy to tie, and I think it's really a beautiful fly.